This is a little bit more of an elite group and very targeted in who was invited. Everyone for different reasons. And I think everybody here can handle some of the less traditional stuff we're going to talk about here. But there'll be a couple people here who have some of their feathers ruffled, and that's okay. And frankly, that's the main reason I give you a source sheet, okay? I could pontificate about this stuff and tell you things, and that's fine. But everything we're going to learn tonight is basically straight from a Gemara. And some of the Gemaras you probably never heard of. You Daf Yomi Hasidim have heard of them, which is amazing because 50 years ago, no one heard of some of these Gemaras in Kutchim, but they're amazing, amazing things. But the main thing we're going to be focusing on is the special kochos of Adar. And as you know, the Adar, we titled this year, The Gift of Choice. And we all know that choice is a very sacred thing, particularly in Yiddishkeit. But let's talk about some of the ways that we might get this wrong, might get this right. And again, I usually don't use so many Gemaras, but I didn't translate them for a very simple reason. If you notice in the first 4 or 5 sources of the Gemaras that I use, you're literally taking one line. That's all. These are not complicated things. I don't need a lot of time to translate them. Here's the first Gemara, which I think most of you have probably heard of. It starts off, Mishanichnas Av Mimatim B'Simcha. When the month of Av comes, we try to drown out the Simcha a bit. Mishanichnas Av Mimatim B'Simcha, Mishanichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha. And when the month of Adar comes, we're Marbin in the Simcha. Now let's just think about that for a second. Think of all the things we do to be mamamet the simcha in Av. What do? We don't swim, we don't listen to music, we don't make chasanas, we don't get haircuts. I mean, we know how to take simcha out of Av, and we do it. What things do we do to be marbin simcha in Adar? Let's be honest. If it wasn't for Purim, it'd be like any other month. How many of us have taken the entire Adar Rishon and done something extra to be marbin the simcha? And the answer is almost nobody. Because again, forgive me, it's going to ruffle some feathers, but part of Litvish Judaism is to suck the simcha out of everything. And maybe it's for good reasons. Where Avelis for the base of Mikdash, there's all types of halachic authorities that you're not supposed to be too. Okay, I get it. But understand what we're dealing with here. This is the exact same Gemara that says we should be mematim simcha and Av, and we are pros at it. But when the Gemara tells us we're supposed to be marbim b'simcha, we don't even know what to do with ourselves. If it wasn't for the one day of Purim, where people drink a little bit, they dress up in costumes, there's all kinds of leitzanas. For one day, they're a little bit nutty. And then as soon as the second day comes, as soon as the 17th of Adar comes around, we're back to normal. We're back to our regular humdrum drives. No one's doing anything to be marbin b'simcha. And why is it? This is the same basis. The exact same basis, the exact same Gemara that says when we're mematim simcha in Av, we're supposed to be marbin b'simcha in Adar, and we just don't do it. It's a failing. Make no mistake about it, it's a failing. And we need to concentrate on that. It's a shame we've already missed a month of it, but we have a month left. We just had Rosh Chodesh Adar. We have a whole month to follow this Gemara's directive of being marbin b'simcha in Adar. And it doesn't just mean on the day of Purim. It also means that when we're sending out Shalach Manas, and we're getting up early to go to Megillah, and all the things that are mitzvahs hayom, we don't do them with despair. We don't do them with, oy vey, look what I have to do. No! The whole month of Adar is supposed to be incredibly special. The main thing that I want to get across, though, is that Adar is not just a Simcha Dika month. We do say Marbin b'Simcha, but look at source number 2. Source number 2 goes on to say, Hilchach Bar Yisrael Islay Dina Bahadi Nachri. If a Jew has a court case against a guy, he should have it rescheduled from Av and placed in Adar, if possible. Now, that's nothing to do with Simcha. That has to do with Mazel. The Gemara goes on to tell us that not only is Adar Marbin b'Simcha, but your Powerball numbers are more likely to come up. Mazel is on your side in Adar. So if you've ever considered buying a lottery ticket, this is the month. That's what this second Gemara says. Change your court date from Av and move it to Adar. That has nothing to do with Simcha. It has to do with the mazel of the month. Understanding that Adar has kochos beyond a tziva of being misameach, it has special kochos in it. And the question is, how did that come to be? Now, we could have a whole discussion about how the zodiacs and things like that control different mazolos in different months, but let's just accept it at face value what the Gemara is saying. We're not going to get into the whys, but Adar is a mazel dika month. Okay. So let's go to source number 3 and try to figure out a little bit about where this came from, though. So the Gemara number 3 is a Gemara many of you are familiar with. The Gemara Megillah talks about Haman's plan to get rid of the Jews. And it says that, I'm sorry, my arts and crafts here weren't so good, so I cut off certain lines. But if you look at source number 3, it says, B'chodesh Adar Sameach Simcha Gedola, Amar Nafal Lipur, Be'ach Shemes Bo Moshe. This is Haman celebrating that when he decided to make a gorel, a lottery, to determine what day he wanted to destroy Klal Yisrael, he was happy that it fell out on Zion Adar. Happy to fell out in the month of Adar. Why was he happy about that? Because he knew from his people that Moshe Rabbeinu had died in Chodesh Adar. Must be that it's not a good Zman for Klal Yisrael because Moshe Rabbeinu died then. Goes on the Gemara to say, "V'lo hayu yodea shebeshiva ba'adar," that on the 7th day of Adar, so beshiva Adar nolad. They didn't know that Moshe Rabbeinu was also born. Haman didn't have that piece of information. He mistakenly thought that the only Masorah for Jews in the month of Adar was that Moshe had died. He didn't know that he was born. So his cheshbon was all messed up. So he made a mistake. He was also born. But let me ask you a question. Does that explain why Adar became a good month for us? No. All that does is make it equal. One side to say it's not good, one side to say it is good. Why does it become mazel dik from there? It doesn't. All it does is make it equal. I understand it makes Haman's cheshbon messed up. He thought it was a month where it's going to make things terrible. But it just makes it even. Yet, despite the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was born and died in Adar, we say it's a mazel dik month. Why? It should just be even. So again, here is a Gemara that, unless you're learning Daf Yomi, you probably haven't learned. It's one of the, I don't know how you say it, just more shocking Gemaras you'll ever read. It's really only a couple lines. The Gemara Menachos, source number 4. Amresh Lakish pa'amim shebitlu shel Torah ze yisoda. There are times, Diksiv asher shuvra, Amar HaKadosh Baruch L'Moshe Yashakach. I'm sorry, I can't read so well, so I'll take it, Shibarta. There are times when destroying the Torah is a good thing. I don't know, that was a shocker to me. There's times when destroying the Torah is a good thing. Comes along and he says, yeah, because he brings a raya from Moshe Rabbeinu. Go down to source number 5 where it continues a little bit. I think it does at least. No, sorry, it's still in source number 4 because I cut part of it off. It goes on to say, though, Moshe Rabbeinu is coming down from Har Sinai, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, do you know what they're doing down there? The Egel is going on right now. This is what your people are doing. And Hashem gives them a tziva, go bring them the Torah now. And what does Moshe do? He breaks the luchos. There was no tziva to break the luchos. The tziva was to take the Torah to Klal Yisrael. And Moshe says, no, I understand God told me to go and bring the Torah to the Bnei Yisrael, but I am going to decide to break them. That's a pretty big limb to go out on. I'm thinking that if I'm on my way to 7 Mile Market and I get this epiphany from God that this is where I'm supposed to go to 7 Mile Market and get the stuff and come home. But I think, you know what? I know God gave me this inspiration to go to 7 Mile Market, but I'm going to go to Dunkin' Donuts on the way. I mean, I can't even fathom that. None of us can fathom that. Moshe Rabbeinu, how can Moshe Rabbeinu, on the heels of them committing the greatest error they ever did, his solution is to disregard a direct tziva from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to not only disregard it, but to take the holiest objects that we ever had, that had ever been given to human beings, and he's going to break them. That's just, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to begin. And it says in this Gemara that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Yasher Koach, Moshe, you did the right thing by destroying the luchos. Wow. Boy, did he catch a break. I mean, really, think about it. You're given at Siva to take the holiest objects. You're just in our Sinai. You're watching Hashem carve these stones out with his own hands, whatever that means. And he gives you these holiest of things ever existing. And he says, take them down to the people. And you say, I know better. You better hope it works out. Because it seems like a really, really big limb to go out on. But that's what the Gemara says. What do we do with the broken pieces of the luchos? The broken pieces went in the Aron, right alongside the second set of luchos. The broken pieces were considered holy, extremely holy, even though they had nothing written on them anymore. It wasn't like they had a little bit written on them now, but they didn't have as much as before. No. They're gone. They're gone. The luchos didn't exist anymore after Moshe Rabbeinu broke them. Yet, they find a place inside the Aron. Well, how does that happen? So there's an incredible musar from here. Hashem views the mistakes that we've made almost as much as great as the good things that we do. Because the mistakes are representative of our making choices. The Velt was created so that we have Bechira Chafshi, so that we can make choices. Hashem didn't need a Velt where everybody does the right thing. He has Malachim for that. This Velt was not created for perfection. We are not perfect beings. We're going to make mistakes. Hashem knows that we're going to make mistakes. But more than that, he treasures our mistakes, because by the very fact that we can make mistakes, it means when we do the right thing, we're doing it for the right reasons. We're doing it for Hashem's cheshbon, l'shem shamayim. He wants us to embrace the power to choose. Let's think of some other people who have done some really radical things, like Moshe Rabbeinu breaking the luchos. In a couple months, we'll hear the story of Boaz. Boaz, after 300 years of there being in existence the halacha of Amoni v'Moavi lohova b'kal Hashem, Boaz sees this young woman, decides that he's supposed to marry her, and he re-enunciates what the halacha was really supposed to have been. Nobody else knew this. He's got an entire kahila around him who knows Amoni v'Moavis lohova b'kal Hashem. He says, no, Amoni v'lo Amonis, Moavi v'lo Moavis. And again, the Gemara is very clear that this was a re-enunciation of what was supposed to have been the halacha all along, but it was not known to anybody. That was not the practice. The minhag was that nobody could marry in. No one from Ammon, no one from Moab. And Boaz says, no, we're going to change what you all have thought was the halacha for the last 300 years. And because of that, Rus is born, and because of that, David HaMelech is born. If Boaz takes the easy road and says, hey, wait a second, you know what? I don't need the hate mail. I don't need all the people on TikTok and Instagram calling me out. I don't need it. It's just not what I signed up for. No David HaMelech, no Rus. Esther. We're going to learn the Megillas Esther in a couple of weeks. Every single Gemara that discusses the challenge that Esther faced in the Megillah, every posek will tell you that there is absolutely no basis for Esther to say, I'm going to Achashverosh voluntarily. She's not allowed. Al Shlosha Devarim, right? Gila Rayas is one of them. She's not allowed to go to Achashverosh voluntarily. Achashverosh takes her against her will. She has no choice. But to go for voluntarily, she's not allowed to do. Every posek would agree with that. L'halacha, Esther is not allowed to go. Not only does she go, Mordechai, the Gadol Hadar of the time, a Navi, tells her to go, and Esther goes back to him and says, well, wait a second, but you got to get everyone to daven for me. You got to get everyone to fast for me. So when I violate this halacha, I've got some schus. Again, I'm not advocating that people just disregard halacha. That's not why we're here. I'm not suggesting that. All I'm telling you is that there are some times historically that you have to understand some people went out on a radical limb against halacha, and it worked out very well for us. So again, unless you're on a pretty high level, you don't want to be making those calls, but nevertheless, there are times. Understand the role that halacha plays in Judaism. Halacha tells us how to do the mitzvahs. That's what halacha does. If it gets to the point where halacha on top of chumrah, on top of gezerah, means you're not following the mitzvah properly, then again, you're not even Jewish anymore. You become so frum, you're not even Jewish. You're a nut. Yiddishkeit is not a nutty religion. We make it nutty. You want a perfect example of how we make Judaism nutty? Can't get around this. There are, I suspect, looking around, at least 2 people in this room who are going to object to what I'm going to tell you, but it's the way it is. There is a halacha in the Mishnah Berurah that you should not take medication on Shabbos. Did you know that? Did you know that? Black and white halacha. Shouldn't take medication on Shabbos. So there are very, very chashuv people, pious people who are trying to do the right thing, and they have a migraine on Shabbos, and they're like, okay, just another 2 hours. I'll get through. I'm not taking anything. I'm going to get through. Some of them make it 4 hours like that. And that's how they get through Shabbos, because they have this problem that 2 Tylenol or 2 ibuprofen could take care of, but they won't take it. Because halacha says we don't take medicine on Shabbos. Do you know why the Mishnah Berurah says you should not take Tylenol or medication on Shabbos? That's right. Because the way medications were made is we took herbs and things of that nature, we ground them up, we crushed them, and we made them into medications. I would go out on a limb and say that I don't think anybody here has ever gone to their backyard on a weekday to crush up any herbs to make their own medication.
Depends what kind of herbs you have.
Well, exactly. But you may be the exception. But again, if you're sitting there destroying the chayfetz of Shabbos because you're suffering, you can't possibly have Menuchas Shabbos when you're suffering like that. And you're shaking because you're just not functioning, but you're being so frum. You're not taking the aspirin. You're not frum, you're meshugana. You're mamish a meshugana. And my Rosh Yeshiva, okay, maybe he's a little bit out of the box. I don't think he thinks so. But he told us very specifically, he says, when the Mishnah Berurah brings down the reason for a chumrah of his, if the reason does not apply, you may not have to follow that halacha. Again, lefi aniyas daiti. If you don't take an aspirin in today's world on Shabbos because you're trying to do the beautification of Shabbos, you're a tippish. And that's the kind of stuff that chases people away. We're not supposed to be a crazy religion. Yiddishkeit is not a crazy religion. Well, we make it crazy. Somehow we think that if we do this thing, we suffer a little bit more. We're frummer. Kadosh Baruch Hu did not create the world for you to suffer. There are times we have onshim, whatever, we take, we understand, we learn from them, but the world was not created to suffer. And the idea that the more you suffer, the frummer you are is about the treifest thing you can come up with in the Yiddishkeit world. Nevertheless, that's where we are. You know, Moshe Rabbeinu breaks the luchos, and the whole trajectory of the world has changed, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, fantastic, Moshe. I'm glad you did it. Source number 5 may help explain this a little bit. So again, I apologize for my arts and crafts here. My eyes are so bad I can't see what I'm doing. But source number 5 has a well-known principle. Gadol mitzvah mi shalom einu mitzvah. The schar for a person who's commanded to do a mitzvah is greater than the person who does it voluntarily. It's a little bit counterintuitive. You would think that the person who's taking and saying, I don't have to do this, but I want to do God's will, you would think he's on a higher madregas. Says the Gemara, no. If you have to do something, you get more schar. Because psychologically, if you have to do something, it's counterintuitive to what you want to do. The nature of the Welt is that we were created to do what we want. That's the Yetzer Hara that we battle all the time. We want to do what we want to do. And the fact that the Torah tells us there's certain times you have to do something, that makes it a little harder for us to go against our nature, and therefore there's a higher schar for gadol mitzvah shalom shalosha in a mitzvah. So again, the idea is though that Hashem treasures our choices. The fact that we choose to do something is of great value to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why Bechir Chafshi was the most important thing put into the Welt. The Gemara, I think it's a Brachos, but I don't remember. It might be Yerushalmi. I don't remember. The Gemara says that the later you were in the Shishim Bereshis, the more important you were. That's why man was the last thing created. And the Gemara goes on to say the last thing that was put into man was his free choice, his Bechir Chafshi. That's the most treasured thing that a Kadosh Baruch Hu goes out of his way to protect at all levels. Now here's where it gets a little bit really interesting, though. Look at source number 6. Gemara in Nida says that when a person is created, Gibor Ochalash, Chacham Utipish, Ashar Ani. From the day a person is conceived, it is predetermined how strong he will be, how smart he will be, how wealthy he will be. All those things are predetermined. Now, mind you, predetermination does not mean that it can't be changed. It just means that's the pre-Masudar path. There's all types of things we can do with our Bechira to change a path, but nevertheless, there is a predetermined path, the way things will go if we don't change them. And says this Gemara that this path suggests, not suggests, but the predetermined path is how tall you're going to be, all predetermined. How smart you're going to be, all predetermined. How wealthy you're going to be. But the next words of the Gemara is, Ve'ilu Rasha Utzadik Lo Ka'amar. Whether you're a Rasha or a Tzaddik, that has never been even suggested. That's completely up in the air, and the day you're born is when it starts. The chinuch that you have, the friends that you have, the environment you're raised in, the choices that you make, that is the sole determination as to whether you're a tzaddik or a rasha. You can be 6'2", muscular, super wealthy, charismatic, and a genius, and you can be a rasha. You can be the pauper who's 5'2", and he's a meager nothing, and he's not that smart, and you can be a tzaddik. It doesn't matter what physical gifts you have. That has nothing to do with determination as to whether you're going to be a tzaddik or a rasha. As a matter of fact, there is no predetermined path, because those things, whether you're a tzaddik or a rasha, is solely determined by the choices that we make. Another Gemara talking about the value of our bechira. This is what it's all about. Hashem gives all of us certain things which are talents, certain things where we are less gifted in, and we have to balance those out to make ourselves help make ourselves the best decisions. Our choices decide whether we're tzaddikim or rasha. I think the best mashal for this is you have a beggar. This beggar, his entire existence is carrying around a sack. And he carries around this sack every day with his few meager possessions, maybe a change of a shirt, maybe something else that he carries around in his bag. And the only way he sustains himself is by begging money all morning long. He gets a quarter from this one. When he's really lucky, he strikes it. He gets $1 from that one until he's got $15. He can go into it's expensive now. I know it used to be $8, but apparently now it costs $15 to go into McDonald's and get a, whatever they call it, a Happy Meal. I don't know, whatever. But that's what he does. He saves enough money to buy himself lunch. He buys himself lunch. And then he comes out, begs the afternoon, hopefully gets enough money for dinner. And this is what this guy does day after day, week after week. If you don't think there's people living like that now, I urge you, go downtown to Charles Street. They're all over the place. I've seen them for 12 years running. This is all they do. Now imagine this guy who has nothing. All he has is the legs under his belt to help him walk to the next person to schnorr money. He walks into McDonald's one time to get lunch, and he decides, you know what, I need the restroom here. Rumor has McDonald's has pretty clean restrooms. So he goes into the McDonald's, and while he's using the restroom, he puts his little meager sack of goods on one of the benches outside. Unbeknownst to him, while he's in the restroom, someone comes inside the McDonald's and stuffs $1 million in the bottom of his sack. He leaves, doesn't tell the guy that he did it. The guy comes out. And what does he do for the rest of the day? He goes out and begs money because he has no idea that there's $1 million at the bottom of his sack. The $1 million has no value at all if you don't know that it's there. Think about that for a second. That's the gift of Adar. The gift of Adar is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, this may sound familiar to some of you, all your donations are quadrupled this week. Make a donation. We've got a super match campaign going on. Give $1, it will equal $4. I don't know if any of you ever heard such a thing, but apparently such things exist. They make such phone calls. They have such fundraisers. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling you with Adar. He's telling you that the multiplier is on. You think doing a good deed in Adar means the regular stuff? It doesn't mean the regular stuff. It's like Elul. It's like Yom Kippur. The Gemara is very clear. If someone wants to do tshuva and it's the middle of April and they feel bad about a chait and they really trying to do tshuva, but they're kind of distracted. They're not really in the spirit. They feel bad about something, but they're not. Maybe not. That same tshuva in Yom Kippur, Kadosh Baruch Hu accepts. Because Yom Kippur is a zman miyuchad, specially set aside, that even if your tshuva is not perfect, Kadosh Baruch Hu will accept it. There's different kochos and different zmanim. And what we're told about Adar is that everything you do is multiplied. It's a month of mazel. You take a gamble in Adar, the payoff is much, much higher. It's not like a regular month where sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Things are meant to work out for you in Adar. Adar is the month to take a gamble in. Maybe you get married in Adar, maybe you buy a house in Adar. These are mazeldik times. This is when you try to do things. And that's the biggest gift, as HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, that all your actions are quadrupled. Everything you do in Elul is magnified. It's like the beggar being told that there's the $1 million at the bottom of his bag. If you know the money's at the bottom of the bag, it's a game changer. And that's the gift that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us. And perhaps this point is driven home best by the source sheet on the back. And that's when I bothered to translate, because it's a little bit longer, but it's a basic Mishnah in Avos. Everybody here has probably learned it. Chiba Yisera Nodas Lo Shenivra B'Tselem. The first underlined sentence, the Mishnah tells us, is that one of the gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us is he tells us that we were created B'Tselem Elokim. It's not, you're not some random species here like a cow or like a butterfly. No, you were created B'Tselem Elokim. You're a different bria altogether. And somehow that's a gift for us to know that we were created B'Tselem Elokim. Shenemar ki B'Tselem Elokim asa asam chavivin Yisrael shenikra badam l'makom. And also that we were told in a pasuk in the Torah that we're banim, we're like children to Hashem. That has value. Chiba Yasera nodas lahem shenikra vanim l'makom. The greatest gift is that Hashem told us that we're like his children. Because the knowledge is like the money at the bottom of the beggar's bag. It has increased value if you know it. And that's the gift that Hashem gives us. He tells us that not only were we created b'Tselem Elokim, but that we're like banim to Hashem. Shenemar banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem. That's the pasuk. And Hashem tells us we're like children to him. And then look, if you look at the English, it says it right out at the bottom of the page. A gift bestowed on a person without knowledge of its value lacks warmth and affection. The greatest chiba Hashem has for us is not to create the world with random mazalos and random kochos. And you luck out that the egel happened to be in the month of, in the month of Tishrei, and it happens to fall out on Yom Kippur. No, it's not luck. Hashem tells you, I don't want you to rely on luck. I want you to know that in Adar, the things you do are going to have the multiplier on. I want you to know that in Tishrei, if you ask for kapara, even if you don't do it exactly right, like you might be doing in January, February, I'm going to forgive you anyway. He tells us these kochos because banam l'Hashem l'tem elkeichem, because you're like children to him. That's the great chesed and love that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for us, is that he tells us these kochos. That's the great gift of Adar. The great gift is the gift of choice. Think about it for a second. We have all these opportunities. How do we, you would think Adar, there's two types of holidays in the Jewish religion. We fought a war, we lost, we fast. We fought a war, we won, we eat. Everything revolves around food. Now you would think that a story like Purim, where, everything is on the line, the entire Klal Yisrael is going to be annihilated and wiped out. You would think that how do we commemorate such an event? Okay, there's a Suda because you have to eat. We fought a war, we won. But where's the fasting? Where's the special Tehillim? Where's the special Vidoy that we say because of the tremendous peril that we were in? Instead, Purim is celebrated with nothing of that. Purim is celebrated with joy. The mitzvahs hayom, shalach manas ish l'reyehu, matanas lavyonim, everything's bein adam l'chavero. And think about that for a second. Remember, before the world was created, the only thing there was makom. That's all there was. And you know what? Makom was just fine. The world was created l'chavero because of all the other people that are here. Those are the people that we have a chance to make a difference to. Does Hashem care if we're good bein adam l'makom? Of course. Hashem wants the mitzvahs, He wants chivas, He wants us to be laleches b'drachav, He wants us to emulate His midos, particularly bein adam l'chavero. There's an inyan bein adam l'makom, but makom's going to be just fine regardless. The ikar mitzvahs of Purim are to teach us that the bein adam l'chavero makes a bigger difference to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He created a whole world where the mitzias is bein adam l'chavero. There's definitely, the bein adam l'makom is critical, because if you don't have the bein adam l'makom, there's no reason to do the bein adam l'chavero. Everything we do comes from our basic understanding of morality, of Hashem's mitzvahs, things of that nature. But not for Hashem's benefit. So that we understand that all the mitzvahs are designed to help us make tikkun in the world, to make the world a better place. And we do that one family at a time, one neighborhood at a time, one shul at a time, one community at a time. We may not be able to do everything, but we can make a rishon. We make a rishon by doing things that are right. And that's the main message that Purim drives home for us, is that we help. We give to other people. And that's the way we celebrate Purim. The same Mishnah that tells us, Mishnichnas of mematim b'simcha, Mishnichnas adar marvim b'simcha. And not just for yourself. Bring simcha to other people, however you may do that. Everyone here has the capacity to bring simcha to other people. It may be something as simple as making a phone call. Think about someone. Maybe it's a relative. Maybe it's a friend who you haven't spoken to in a while. Just the ability to make someone feel good for a moment, to bring simcha to somebody. Adar is the time for it. Every day is the time for it. But in Adar, when you do it, the multiplier's on. Take advantage of the multiplier. It's the greatest gift the Kadosh Baruch Hu tells us. Take advantage of Adar, Hashem tells us. Mishenichnas Adar marvim b'simcha. Not because everything was great. Moshe Rabbeinu died in Adar also. Mazel can be good, mazel can be bad. We wish someone mazel tov at a simcha. That's not the only kind of mazel there is. Mazel can be more than one way. Adar can be the breeding ground of exactly what was the gzeira on Purim. But think about it. What happened when Esther made her choice? What happened when Mordechai told her to go to Achashverosh? Did we just come back to being even? Did Achashverosh say, okay, we're going to be mevatel the gzeira. We're not going to kill all the Jews? No. It was turned on its head so that Mordechai became second in charge to Achashverosh. He has the signet ring, lays the groundwork for the second Beis Hamikdash being built. We went from ashes to the top of the tower. It wasn't just an even Steven kind of thing. Because if you take advantage through your actions of the mazel that exists in Adar, then the multiplier is on. You can literally go from nothing to everything. You don't just go from nothing to being back to normal. You go from nothing to everything. This year we're blessed with 2 Adars. We missed one. We're a whole nother month now. And it's not just Purim Day. The whole month of Adar. We have a chance to take advantage of the multiplier. And maybe I'm the only schnook, but I mean, how can I go to sleep if I don't share this with you? What kind of idiot does that make me? I come to this Havana, and maybe you all thought of this already. I don't know. But I hadn't thought of it before. This is my try to get all of us to be a little bit more, use that multiplier, to to be marbin the simcha in this month. It's a special, special gift, and you can't imagine the impacts it can have. I know you all came out here to do a chesed for me. I appreciate you all coming. Have something to eat. Enjoy some simcha. And Mirza Hashem, the simcha that we're marbin in this month should be a real Yeshua for Klal Yisrael, and we should see great things because of it.